Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
We didn't change our clothes.
We say.
I know. Oh, welcome. Welcome to Wholehearted Living with Valerie and
Bennie.
And we didn't change our clothes, you YouTube people.
Okay, we're doing this again. Hello and welcome to Wholehearted Living with Bennie
and Valerie.
I just read it again. I'm sorry. I forget the name of our podcast. So we are at Wholehearted Living. We are the siblings. You tell the story.
We are the siblings where one of us brings a topic and the other one has no idea what we're going to talk about. And then we chat about it and try to tie it all into Wholehearted Living.
Yeah. And last week was interesting because you just talked about the fact you just really shared a story of something that was personal to you. So I appreciate that because we want you guys to know. I mean, we talk about wholehearted living as though we're living wholeheartedly perfectly all the time. And that's just simply not the case for either one of us.
Definitely try to living a life wholeheartedly always, and always on the positive note, always. But there are things that happen, and I don't ever want to come across as I'm like this perfect person. And
God, no. I mean, the thing that's interesting is that I think we learn more from trials, and I know this sounds funny. We really learn more when things are difficult. It's funny, Job. One of my favorite stories ever from the Bible is when Job, for those of you guys that care about the Bible, Job was a really good guy, very wealthy, very well-to-do, and he really served God. And then, long story short, the quote-unquote enemy, Satan, said, hey, the only reason why he does that is because you treat him so well. And then he said, you can do anything you want to him except for take his life. And he did that. Took his family, took his wealth, took everything. And at the end of Job, what I love is this little saying. He goes, I knew of you, God, by the hearing of my ear. In other words, I've heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. The idea is we really experience life through trials. We don't experience life through successes.
Absolutely.
And so it's super.
If you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah, and if you're not failing, you're not trying. And the truth is that it's through those things that we really learn, that we really grow, that we really get stretched. That's the times that make a difference. It's not the times that everything is going well, because when everything is going well,
right.
It's like it's not that big of a deal.
Right. No, so true.
I told you that I started using Apple. Iggy. Hello, Iggy. I do this all the time.
You
I
do
freak
this
everybody
every
out.
time.
Every
yes.
time. I totally forgot. Iggy, thank you.
How did you suddenly remember Iggy by saying apple?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Iggy, thank you.
It's like you forgot something for the podcast.
Thank you, Iggy, for keeping us in sound. Okay.
Iggy's like the best person ever, really. Honestly.
He really is.
You know, when I first
cool.
met Iggy, I was just let's back up a few years. When I first met Iggy, I thought, wow, he's so quiet. And he still is a quiet person. But but he's actually very funny. Like
he is funny,
and especially in Big Bear.
Oh my God.
Because he's had a lot to drink. Iggy doesn't drink except for in Big Bear. It's pretty rare that Iggy drinks, but when he drinks, he's pretty funny. He's really the king of that's what she said jokes.
He is, especially in Big Bear after a few drinks.
Yeah. No, he remembers them all the time. Yeah. That's the truth. So so thank you, Iggy, for keeping us in sound.
Yes.
Yeah. And humor. Yeah. But
so do you guys want to know what's going on with me?
Not really. Okay. Yes, Valerie. Tell us about you.
Well, it's not really me. It's my Maggie. She started her period.
Oh, my Maggie. You might need to explain that.
Okay. So I don't know if I even said this on the podcast, but in the summertime, I tried to get Maggie spayed. And it would have been perfect timing because I wasn't working. Let's
go back. Maggie is a dog.
God. Sorry.
This is their first daughter.
This is my sweet new little doggy we adopted in March. And so I thought.
March?
Yeah, it was March.
Wow.
Golly, March, April, May, June, July, August. 6 months?
Yeah.
Call the cops.
Right?
Sorry.
So in the summertime, I thought, okay, I'm going to make an appointment. I was going to go get her spayed. And then they came back. I was already home. I take her to Downey to this place. I was already on the freeway, getting off the freeway. And they said, can you call us when you get a chance? I'm like, because it was a text. I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Call. Your dog has a very juvenile vagina.
What's a puppy, for God's sake?
I know.
Of course it does. That doesn't make any sense. That's the
I
most...
was like in the car listening to this going, what does that mean? I don't understand. And I'm like, yeah, it's a puppy. And we want to have her fixed before she goes into her first heat. And they said, well, actually, because of her juvenile vagina, AKA recessed vagina, she would be more susceptible to urinary tract infections if we do the spade now versus after when she goes into her first heat.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. Then I'm going to come back and get her. I'm going to go get her because I don't know what I...
Oh, you mean you left her there?
Oh, yeah. Well, she was going to be spayed. And they told me that she was going to take hours.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, because they observe her for a little bit and then I go back.
Observer.
Right. So long story short, I go back and get her and they're waiting till she's having her first heat. But I do Google all this stuff and I realize, oh, she does have a recessed vagina. A recessed vulva.
Oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah. It's a very interesting. I actually, when we did adopt her, I actually thought,
oh my gosh, her vulva's recessed. Do I want this dog?
No, but I did look at it and think,
did you really? You looked at your dog's vulva?
She's laying on her back, letting me, pet her tummy. And I'm like, were Coco and Buttercup's, did theirs look like this? I don't remember. And I didn't think it did. So what it basically is there's extra skin.
I'm so sorry. We have to stop. I've never paid attention to my dog's genitals. Ever. That's the weirdest thing.
I didn't pay attention. I just happened to notice. Did my other dogs look like
I didn't pay attention. I happened to notice. If you went into synonyms in Word, wouldn't it say that?
Okay, whatever. I'm going to finish my story.
Okay,
I did literally wonder, did the other dogs look like this? And it just did not notice.
Okay, go for it.
So
Patty's talking. Patty and Peter are having their conversation outside the podcast.
She basically just has extra skin kind of surrounding. And what they were basically saying is when she goes into heat, that usually pushes it back a little bit and then she won't be susceptible to UTIs. Okay. But if they had done the spade while it was still encased, recessed, she would be susceptible. So anyway, long story short, why do I keep saying that? It's a long story.
Hey, you might as well say, wait a minute. Let me tell you the truth.
Yes. I'm not going to lie.
I'm not going to lie.
Today, when I got home from work, she was acting kind of weird. She didn't jump all over me like she usually does. I'm like, oh my God, I've trained her so well. She's not jumping on me. And then I went to pet her and then she got up to walk away and I'm like, oh, there's a little bit of blood on the tile. And then I was like, oh, is it blood because she's in heat or is it because she...
You think that the dog is just like a woman, like right before the period, it's just a horrible time?
Maybe, I don't know, but
I'm sorry.
Do you understand?
My wife is flipping me off. My wife is flipping me off right now.
Hear me out. People, hear me out.
Okay.
Do you understand that when a woman goes when she gets her period, her estrogen lowers and the testosterone is higher, so they become more like a man. So when you guys say, oh, are you guys on your period because you're acting like a bitch, you're actually acting like a man. Like an man.
Wow, that's interesting.
All this because Maggie went into heat today.
It's my topic to. Oh, by the way, you didn't even tell them what the podcast what.
Yeah, I did.
How we exist.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
I sure did.
You said that we're siblings and so on?
I did.
That was on the last podcast. 20 minutes ago. Did she say that?
Wait, Iggy, did I say that?
At this point, I don't know.
She did? Are you sure? Yep. Oh, shoot.
Okay, whatever.
I've had
anyway,
too much
Maggie's
to
in
drink.
heat.
Now that would have been a long story short.
7 to 10 days.
That would have been a long story short.
Oh, and then they said, I Googled it, and they said, if she's a cleaner and cleanses herself a lot, you won't notice a lot of blood, which is great because Maggie's always licking herself.
Like mother, like daughter. Dun, dun, dun.
What?
I'm kidding. It's a joke, for God's sake. God, I hate people.
A lot of editing.
Iggy, you're really going to have to edit this
I
entire
know.
thing.
You might have to erase everything we just said.
Yeah, forget about it. We don't know what we're doing.
I know. Are you guys still with us?
Okay. I'm ready. You know, last week, folks, we had a different topic because Valerie shared a story about her own life and things that are going on and how she would like to experience. Is it fair to say you would like to experience wholehearted living out of a difficult situation?
Absolutely.
Or an awkward situation.
Yeah,
I don't
for
know
sure.
if it's difficult or awkward
Yeah.
or what. So this is the thing. I'm gonna do it. Not a story. I'm gonna ask you. We're gonna do things you hated when I ask you
I
questions.
know. I was just gonna say, oh, here he goes. He's gonna ask a question.
So it is a question that I'm gonna ask, but at the same time, it's kind of funny. Not funny, but what happened was.
Can you just ask a question?
No, be quiet. Leave me alone. What happened, just for you guys that don't know, I journal on a regular basis. Every day, I at least journal once. And so I write something out. It's in a computer system. And I also highlight things that were relatively big in my life. Okay. And so one thing that happened that I had no idea would take place was I posted something on Facebook years ago. It was actually August 27th, 7 years ago. And I posted this thing on Facebook and it went crazy. And I am going to bring it up today.
You went crazy as in what?
Hundreds of people were commenting back and forth.
Really?
And thousands, even maybe not thousands of people commented, but hundreds of people were pushing. I don't know what they were doing. They were commenting.
Oh, wow.
Now,
I didn't even know that you knew that many people.
I hate you. Okay. You know what I just realized that really sucks is that I thought that I could find the whole thing from my journal and I can't. So let's just talk amongst ourselves. No, what happened is that I posted something and it really impacted a lot of people.
So how did that come up with your journal, though? I don't understand how. Like,
oh, okay. So in my journal, what happens in my journal is I can look back at years past when I posted things, and so it'll whatever I posted, and so it's kind of fun to see things.
Oh,
that
so
you've
it'll
said.
come up like on the date, like on the like
Right,
a year.
correct.
Okay.
And so this was something that I said on August 26th of 2007 years ago.
Oh.
Whatever that number is. In 2017. So go. Folks, this is what I want to talk about. So I told you, Valerie Lynn, that I didn't want this to be I don't want this necessarily to be a political issue.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Okay. But here it is.
Mm-hmm.
I read something by a guy named Bruce Waltke. He is a theologian. And what he said was this. Are you listening? Because you're really pointing a picture at somebody. I don't know what this is. What's the picture? Oh my God. Here it is. It says, Old Testament scholar Bruce Waltke sums up righteousness in the book of Proverbs this way. And I want to know your thoughts on this. The righteous are willing to disadvantage themselves to advantage the community. The wicked are willing to disadvantage the community to disadvantage themselves.
Damn.
So I'm going to read this one more time. The righteous are willing to disadvantage themselves to advantage the community. The wicked are willing to disadvantage the community to advantage themselves. That's the way he sums up the book of Proverbs. So this is not me. This is a scholar that said that. And this...
You wrote that in the Facebook post?
I put this in a Facebook post, and I've never in my entire life had so many people comment on it.
Wow.
Hundreds of people commented, and back and forth, including our sister. What are your thoughts about that saying?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think I commented, did I?
I don't know,
I
but
don't
that's not
remember that.
relevant to my question.
I was like, I hear. My thoughts. I don't.
We're coming up on another season of voting for a president, voting for a certain way of thinking. No, but this is what was interesting for me is because I don't remember. I honest to God, 100% do not know where I got the quote from. But it was interesting to me because it was powerful to me, and I thought it was interesting. I just thought it was an interesting little thing. And I have people for several days that commented on this particular post, and I was fascinated by it. I was like, oh my gosh.
What were they saying?
Well, all kinds of things. But my thought is, I'm wondering what your thought is in regards to, is that, do you think that's a true statement, whether or not you understand?
I kind of feel like, well, is it a true statement? I don't know. But I think that whoever feels the first phrase versus the second phrase, I feel like that it is true if you feel that way versus... Wait, am I making sense? Like, I don't know. Is it a true statement? If you feel that way, it's a true statement.
So the idea for me was, when I read this, I really was impacted by it because the idea was the righteous people who are trying to do what's right. Okay, let's call them that way. I don't want to call them Christians. I want to say people that are willing to do what's right are willing to disadvantage themselves in order to advantage the community,
right,
that is disadvantaged. And I just wonder is there something to be said about that being wholehearted? I'm asking that. It's a question I'm asking. It's the question I asked when I said it years ago. And it sparked something that really blew my mind because I wasn't trying to spark anything. I seriously wasn't.
Yeah, you are going to get political with this, actually. No, I feel like I understand that, and I agree with that. I agree with both, actually, to a certain point. But I also feel like people have to do for themselves. So I feel like when you're doing something for, if the right person is doing the right thing for the people that are disadvantaged, those people that are disadvantaged at some point have to put their big boy panties on and start doing things for themselves to accept what is being done for them, or accept am I making sense?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, the truth is that we do, this is a political season, and this is not a political podcast.
No.
So, in any way, shape, or form. But what I thought was interesting about the quote that struck something for a lot of folks is, so I have no idea how this became such an issue, but all of a sudden it went to abortion. It became an abortion issue, and I was like, why in the world is this an abortion issue?
Yeah,
I thought, and people were commenting about, well, because apparently they thought I was saying that you have to vote a certain perspective. My thought was, I think that what part of what's happened in our culture, and with certain, and I really do mean our culture. I've lived in other cultures. I've been to 40 countries. And so I've learned other cultures. And what's interesting is not everybody thinks the American way. For instance, this is totally outside of what I'm talking about right now, but I'm just going to give you one very interesting example. A phrase that we take as a truth here in the United States is time is money. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah.
And and people live like that,
Yeah.
right? Time is money.
Yeah.
Not the world doesn't believe that.
No.
The world doesn't believe that, and the world doesn't live like that. Not maybe there are some cultures that live like that, but a significant part of the world does not believe that and doesn't live like that in any way, shape, or form. So, for instance, in Ecuador, if I were to have a meeting with somebody and I didn't ask about their family first, it would be offensive. You talk to somebody first, you ask them how they are, how is their family, how is it. Now, I don't know if that's the case in every professional, culture or whatever, but what I'm just saying that for certain cultures, relationship is incredibly important, knowing the person, understanding the person, etc. In the United States, we don't necessarily value that to the same degree. It's about, we got to get things done. And we know that time
Have you
is money.
seen our economics right now? So maybe that's why.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to have money to live in the United States at this point. Like you cannot, I mean, you talk about the American dream. Is there an American dream anymore?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. So here you're getting into this subject. The thing that's interesting for me is whatever that American dream might be, I believe America is a place where everybody gets to come and experience that dream, or hopefully get that dream. A lot of people vote. Now, I don't want to get into politics, although I am getting into politics, but this is not my point. When some people vote, they vote with the idea of thinking, I want to experience what hopefully I can ultimately experience, instead of voting for what I actually am dealing with now. Meaning the dream is I'm going to be one of those rich people. So therefore I want those rich people to be advantaged, because one day, God willing, I'm going to be that a rich person.
See, I don't see it like that at all. And I'm talking specifically for today's culture. I don't think that you could even think that you can be a rich person in today's culture. We're talking about people that live in America who cannot even buy a house because of how expensive it is right now. Especially here in California.
Yeah,
obviously.
I was going to say that's a California issue.
But I mean, even so, you're like, okay, well, let me look outside, and you're like, oh my God, those houses used to be like 80,000. Now they're 200,000.
Isn't it weird that we grew up and when somebody said $1 million home, we were like, wow.
God.
And now $1 million home is a 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you talk about the American dream, I don't even think people see it as an American dream. Like, I want to be rich and I'm going to be, I think they're just like, I just hope I can rent a house that my family can fit in.
Yeah. So the question is, when we look at this scholar and when he says what he says, and he says, the righteous are willing to disadvantage themselves to advantage the community. The wicked are willing to disadvantage the community to advantage themselves. Right. Do you think that's a wholehearted statement, or do you think that's naivete, or what do you think?
I mean, I also hear a little bit of selfishness in there. I do hear two parties, if I'm going to be honest. I hear two parties. But again, what I'm going to say is, in terms of that, I really honestly think that I'm going to put it just to me. I am a very giving, and I will take away from my own needs to help somebody else if I know that that person is trying to also help themselves. And I'm not saying it's going to be a contingent, like I'm only going to help you if you help yourselves. But if somebody's going to, I'm going to just say it, live off the system and want me to completely fund their living, then there's got to be a point where I'm going to say, okay, I helped you as much as I can, but now you're on your own.
Yeah.
And so I hear what you're saying with that quote, and I agree with both sides of it. I actually fall very much, if we're going to go politically, fall right down the middle, because I really honestly believe both sides of it. And I have also been on both sides of the spectrum. And I have seen both sides of the spectrum being abused. So I agree with it. I mean, I shouldn't say I agree with it. I see both sides. Is it wholehearted? I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say wholehearted would be that you're going to take away from yourself to be able to better the community. That's where I would actually fall. But I also see the community abusing the person that is going to take from themselves to give to them.
Right.
And so then I say, well, wait a minute. What are you doing for yourselves to further your own community?
Right. To grow.
Right.
And to become better. No. And so this is the eternal question, right? So I think of one thing that I'm going to kind of change the subject, but hopefully it's going to make sense in the long run. You know, one of the things that when we planted a church in Ecuador, one of the values that we had was generosity. Mm-hmm. We actually called it generosity, generosidad. And the idea was this, at least from my mind, was this. I want to be able to give out of what I have. Anything that I can give that is not, you know, honestly, even to the degree of me even needing to sacrifice, mm-hmm. that it actually affects my life. Because if it doesn't affect my life, it's not a sacrifice.
Right.
It's just a generous, it's just a gift.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't affect me, it's not generous.
Yeah.
It's when it's actually generous. Excuse me. When it's generous is when all of a sudden it impacts me.
Yeah,
it's going to make a change in how many Starbucks
mm-hmm.
I can get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm going to give. And so, but the point is that I wanted us, meaning our community, to have a sense of generosity to the degree that we were not looking for any recompense. Am I saying that in English? Recompense?
Yeah.
Is that an English
recompense,
word?
Yes,
okay.
for sure.
The idea is that I don't want anything in return. Mm-hmm. I am giving this to you because I believe that it's not because I believe you deserve it, mm-hmm. not because you've worked for it, but because of the fact that I'm just wanting to give generously.
Yeah.
And I'm even going to go one step further. I remember one time I had this is in church life. Maybe some of you don't care about this, but I had a wonderful worship leader who was also just a wonderful man, and his wife. Both of them were wonderful people. And I remember somebody asking me one time about, you know, we have a job. Do you think that he would be good for it? And I'll be honest with you, it was really hard for me. My first thought was, no, you can't take him away from us. He's great. You know, mm-hmm. why would you do that? But I quickly changed and said, if he wants that, that's what, then you're more than welcome to him. Because honestly, if that's a better life for him, then I want him to experience the best life that he can experience. So my thought was, if I give generously, then somehow the universe is going to get back to me generously, you know, and in my case, God is going to get back to me generously. But it's my job not to hold people with, you know, tight fists.
Yeah.
It's my job to release
Well, I think
people.
I even told you guys this, and this is just taking it down to a very, very medial level. When we decided that we wanted Kylie's friend to go to the wedding.
That's right.
And I was like, I want him to be there with you guys, and we're going to pay for the ticket. And, you know, and as silly as it sounds, we paid for a flight ticket for him to come down to go to the wedding. But for me, I wasn't getting paid during the summer because I don't get a paycheck during the summertime. You know, Peter even jokingly said something like, well, there goes your tattoo, you know, because that was going to be money that I was going to go get a tattoo that I really wanted. And I'm like, that's okay. I want to do this for him, you know, and I know this is, you know, this is taking it down a lot of levels, but it was like, there was a part of me that's like, I don't know if we can really do this, but I really want to do it, you know.
Right.
And it took away from things that we were going to have pleasure, if you will, you know. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, we're not going to be able to pay for a gas bill this year, you know, or this month, you know. It was just, you know, maybe my tattoo money is going to be gone, but and then so when I say that, yes, I feel like I am that kind of a person, but at the same time, it's like, and I don't want anything in return from this person at all. when you mentioned the quote, I was basically thinking I'm thinking of community at large, and I'm thinking there's got to be a time, in my perspective, there's got to be a time when there's like, okay, enough is enough. What are you going to do for yourself? Like, how much more can I keep giving? When are you going to say, okay, well, thank you so much for the help. Now I need to be on my own or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, this is obviously the big catch, right? So, because my goal not my goal. I don't even know if I had a goal. When I first originally did this, it was literally, I just thought, wow, that's a very interesting quote. And I posted it. I post so little on social media nowadays that it's funny. But I posted this thing and it went crazy. And my point was that I think what's interesting at times is that we're so concerned about what the other person is going to do rather than concerned about what we do.
Right.
And my thought was, I want to focus on what I can do.
Yeah.
And what I know I can do is X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And what I know I would like, and see, my thing is that I will confess that I tend to focus because of the fact that because of my travels, I reckon, because of my experiences with working with people that are very underprivileged, that maybe don't know, they just don't have it. They don't know how to pull their bootstraps up. You know what I mean? It's like, they just really don't know how to do that. And there's a certain amount of disadvantage that they've had that they're stuck. And then there's the other people, which I don't even want to talk about, that abuse the system entirely.
Yeah,
so that's like a totally different thing.
Right.
Those people don't deserve anything.
Yeah.
So that's, and then there's people that even go, there's some people that just abuse the system. And then there's not only the people that abuse the system, there's people that take advantage of it and actually try to make money off of it like crazy. That's obviously another group of people.
Right.
The thing that I think is interesting is the mindset of people who are quote unquote righteous, and their mindset is, but I'm still focused on myself. And the idea of the quote was, at least the way I interpret it as, the righteous are willing to disadvantage themselves. This is based on this scholar who said, this is the way he summarizes Proverbs. The righteous are willing to disadvantage themselves to advantage the community. The wicked are willing to disadvantage the community to advantage themselves. And so I just thought, that's a very, I thought, I've never thought of that before. I've never put into words something like that. And it impacted me because I went, is that me? Am I that guy? Who is that? Am I the guy that's saying, scratch my back? When does my back get scratched? And yet here I live in my own home. I never have to worry about my own home. I never have to worry about a roof over my head. I never have to worry about food. I don't get to go to Starbucks whenever I want to. I don't get to travel as much as I would like to. I wish my wife didn't have to work. There's certain things like that I absolutely wish would take place. But then I also go, it's funny because the Bible talks a lot about the rich, and it's harder for the rich man to come to Christ to come to God than it is for the poor man. It's my opinion that there's no poor man in the United States of America, because there's a lot of people who live on the street, but even those people, I mean, I've seen obese people on the street. It's like they're not the African person who's literally dying of food. Literally, they do not have food. Yeah, it's not available. And so it's like every single person, from a biblical standpoint, is rich in the United States because we all have a home, and we all have it's like we don't need God. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, because there's just like, you feel like you almost have to rock bottom, is what you're saying. Yeah. In order to like seek God.
Yeah. And well, even the people that hit rock bottom in the United States isn't rock bottom. When you consider people when they hit rock bottom, they're talking about, I can't live. I'm literally at the verge of death. Yeah. I'm right there. I'm literally at that point. I don't know where my next meal is going to come from.
Right.
I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
I've never met anybody in the United States that's experienced that. I have experienced that in people outside of the United States.
I don't know. I mean, I do agree with you, but I mean, I'm not going to lie. I remember Kylie worked at this place and there was just tents all lined up, but you know, there is a place for them to go get food. They do have places to go get food, and then
but
they
there's
have to go
rules.
sleep in a tent.
There's rules when they have to go to those some of those places. You know, honestly, some of those housing, and I agree. This is where I go. This is where it's weird because you go. Some of those, the reason why those people don't want to move is because if they go into that place, they have to be in there by midnight, and they can't smoke, and they can't do this. And there's
no, they would
rules.
go in. There's places to go in to get the food, but then they would go back to their tent. But you're right. There are the places to that they could stay over. You're right. There's the rules and stuff. Yeah. I mean, I mean, to me, that would be rock bottom. But I guess if you live in another country that's a third world country, that's not necessarily rock bottom yet.
Right. Well, and especially for us in California where it's not freezing cold and people aren't dying and so on and so forth. But I guess what I'm really just trying to say is I from a wholehearted living standpoint, and this is why I thought it was a weird subject matter to bring up. For me, the idea of this was the idea of generosity. The idea of this was the fact that I think part of living wholeheartedly is when we give of ourselves of things that are actually a sacrifice. When we go beyond what's comfortable, but we actually say, this is actually going to cost me something. Somehow, some way, this costs me something.
Right.
That's when we start moving toward like even a different wholehearted living. Yeah. Because it's one thing, I mean, the other day, I mean, Patty and I was literally, we went for a walk. I found $5 on the ground. It was literally on the ground, just sitting there. And I picked it up, put it in my wallet. 3 hours later, we had to go to a store and there was a homeless guy there said, do you have any extra change? I gave him that $5.
Right.
Did I lose anything?
Right.
No.
Right.
Because it wasn't my $5 in the first place. So I maybe to that guy, I was the most generous person in the world. But the truth is, I didn't lose anything. Yeah. It was exactly, I literally gave him.
So you're basically saying generosity would be that you pulled it out of the money that you actually did have. Like
I wonder. Yeah. I wonder.
Well, I mean, I've done that before. Like I've helped people out where, in fact, I was just talking about this the other day with my friend that there was a person that needed money for Thanksgiving for her and her son. And she wanted money. She didn't want the groceries. And then somebody else said, you know, you probably shouldn't give her money. You should probably just do the groceries. I'm like, no, out of my heart, I'm going to give the money. She can do with what she wants. If she doesn't buy it, then that's on her. I'm going to do what I, you know.
Right. I think that's fascinating. I'll never forget. I don't know if Peter, you remember Dave. I'm sorry. You guys don't know Peter's sitting here. But do you remember Dave? Oh my gosh, Perret? He was a pitcher for North High. Pieta. And we played baseball together at Harbor College. And I'll never, ever forget this. A homeless guy was at the parking, like the entrance to the parking lot and he and I played baseball together at Harbor. And I'll never, ever forget this. Here I am. I was a Christian guy, super strong Christian, quote unquote. And I'll never forget this guy asked me for money. And I looked at him and I said, no, because my thought was, I don't know where you're going to use it.
Yeah, you're going to go buy booze or whatever. Yeah.
And I went and I moved forward. Dave Paeta was right behind me. And I saw him give money. And I felt like the biggest piece of crap ever. Because I went, Dave Paeta, at the time, I have no idea where he was with God, but he certainly wasn't confessing that he was like some strong believer or anything like that. And I thought, I'm the guy that I should be like saying, what can I do for you?
Right.
And instead of doing that, I was like, I'm judging you. I don't know what you're going to use this money for. You're just going to go buy drugs or something like that. When in fact, it could very well be that he was literally going to buy food.
Right.
I have no idea what he was going to do with it, but is that my job? And there's a lot of things here and we might get comments about this, but what I'm saying is that what I really believe is that my job is to be generous.
Yeah.
My job is to be generous. My job isn't to judge. My job is to say, am I willing to do whatever I can to help somebody? And And I think when we do that, we're living more wholeheartedly.
For sure.
Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I think Nicole always has that really good heart. She's just like, whatever I have in my pocket, I'll give to someone. Because, I have it all, basically.
Well, ironically, since de Paeta, I would say that, and I think Patty can say this is true. Whenever I see somebody and I have cash on me, I give them something.
That's nice.
I always give them something, and it's stupid because it's like it's not very much usually, but in my heart, I'm thinking I just never forget the fact that it's like, why in the world am I going to judge somebody? Because yes, it's true that some of these people are going to go buy booze, but some of them are really going to go buy food.
Yeah.
It's like this is what they need.
Yeah.
They don't have anything.
Right.
And is it my job to judge them, or is it my job to be generous? So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, this was a weird subject, wasn't it?
No, I mean, it took a long time to get here because we.
Well, it's not to you, the listener, going to take a long time because
Iggy's going to edit
fix
it. Yeah.
Thank you, Iggy. Iggy just puts his head down, going, "Oh crap." So
no, I think that that's a wholehearted life would be to give without questioning, and I think that's a whole thing with anything. Like, don't expect anything in return. You don't have to ask questions or have answers. You can just live that life. I will agree. I will say that when I worked at a grocery store and I would go outside and get carts, there was a lot of people walking the parking lot asking for money for food. And at the time, I didn't carry a lot of cash. I didn't carry cash, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, I can go back in the store and get you some whatever you want. I can buy you a roasted chicken, this, that, and the other. No, I just want cash. I'm like, well, that's all I can offer you at this point is to buy you.
I remember
some food.
I was literally in Berlin. This was before the wall came down. And I remember being in Berlin. I remember a guy complaining to me that he needed food and he was dying, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I'll buy you food. I'm not going to give you money. And I took him into McDonald's. We bought food. And I'm not joking when I say this, that it was sad to me. But he had the whole bag of food. I watched him walk across the street and throw it away.
What?
He threw all the food away that I gave him. And so in his case, clearly
he just needed it for something.
Yeah, he wanted a fix. So he went along with me. But
interesting.
But the
oh my
truth
gosh.
is that he wanted. But then I still go back to the fact that, does that mean that I did wrong?
No.
Or does that mean that maybe this guy is going to second guess and think about, I have no idea what that meant to that person. But what I do know is that it's not my job to judge the person.
Right.
And when I really think of my faith, Jesus didn't judge.
Right.
And so I'm going, why in the world would I?
Right. Who are we?
Who am I to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who am I to do that? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So anyway. Well, folks, I have no idea if this was helpful to you. If it wasn't, I'm glad you listened. Please feel free to comment. But I'm hoping that what this does for you, if nothing else, is to second guess anything that you might have in your own heart and just say, I'm going to be generous. It's not my job to try and figure all this out. My job is simply to be generous.
Right.
And to really think about how can I help the disadvantaged people that are around the world. So
sounds good.
There you go.
Thank you.
So yeah, we are at wholehearted_living _podcast and on Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you.
Always.
Always.
Thank you, Benny.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Ciao.